A president was shot, but it wasn't the bullet that killed him. James Abram Garfield is one of those American presidents history often overlooks. Unlike Washington, Lincoln, or Kennedy, his name rarely stirs immediate recognition. And yet, Garfield's story is one of the most tragic and bizarre in American politics. His presidency lasted only 200 days, less than a single year, cut short not just by an assassin's bullet, but by a nation unprepared for what came next. Garfield rose from poverty, the last president born in a log cabin. A teacher, a Civil War hero, and a respected congressman, he embodied the American dream. By 1880, after a turbulent convention, Garfield was elected the 20th president of the United States. His vision was of unity, healing a divided country still reeling from the scars of the Civil War. But behind this noble story was a fragile political system. The Republican Party was split into factions fighting for control of federal jobs. Garfield, determined to reform the spoils system, made enemies on both sides. In this climate of political ambition, resentment, and instability, destiny was waiting. And on July 2nd, 1881, that destiny arrived. In Washington, D.C., a man named Charles Julius Guiteau lurked in the shadows of power. Guiteau was no ordinary man. He was delusional, unstable, and utterly convinced that fate had chosen him for greatness. Born in Illinois, Guiteau had drifted through life failing at nearly everything: law, theology, writing, and even marriage. He was known as erratic, moody, and prone to religious mania. He believed God spoke to him directly. When Garfield became president, Guiteau decided he had personally secured Garfield's election by writing a speech, a rambling, incoherent piece few even read. In his warped mind, that effort entitled him to a powerful diplomatic position. He wanted to be U.S. ambassador to Paris. When his requests were repeatedly denied, Guiteau grew furious. Rejection fed his madness. He began to believe Garfield's death would be a divine act, that killing the president would save the republic and make him a hero. By summer 1881, Guiteau stalked Garfield through the streets of Washington. He bought a pistol, specifically choosing one with ivory grips because he thought it would look better in a museum one day. To him, the assassination was not a crime, but a destiny. On the morning of July 2nd, 1881, President Garfield arrived at the Baltimore and Potomac train station in Washington, D.C. He was cheerful, in good spirits, planning to meet his wife who was recovering from illness. Garfield was traveling with his Secretary of State, James Blaine. The station was bustling, travelers moving with luggage, children clinging to parents, the clatter of carriages outside. It was an ordinary summer morning, but for Garfield, it would be the last normal day of his life. As Garfield walked across the station lobby, Guiteau stepped forward, raising his revolver. At close range, he fired 2 shots. The first grazed Garfield's arm, the second lodged deep inside his back, near the spine. The president collapsed instantly. Panic erupted. Screams echoed through the station. Garfield's bodyguards and bystanders rushed to his side. Blaine, horrified, cradled his friend and shouted for help. Guiteau, remarkably calm, declared, "I am a stalwart. Arthur is president now." Referring to Vice President Chester Arthur, he made no attempt to escape, believing he had fulfilled God's will. Doctors rushed to the scene and carried Garfield back to the White House. At first, hope lingered. The president was conscious, speaking to those around him, but the medical care he received would soon seal his fate. This was the late 19th century, before germ theory was fully accepted. Sterilization was not common practice. Garfield's doctors probed his wounds repeatedly with unwashed fingers and unsterilized instruments, desperately trying to locate the bullet. In doing so, they caused massive infections. For 79 long days, Garfield suffered. He wasted away in agony as infection spread. His once strong frame withered. Newspapers published daily updates, and Americans gathered outside the White House, praying for recovery. The nation was captivated and horrified. watching their president slowly die, not from the bullet, but from medical ignorance. Finally, on September 19, 1881, after nearly 3 months of suffering, James Garfield died. He was only 49 years old. Guiteau insisted he was not guilty of murder. In court, he shouted that it was the doctors who killed Garfield, not him. Strangely, he wasn't entirely wrong. Modern historians agree infection and malpractice caused Garfield's death more than the bullet itself. Guiteau claimed divine inspiration, saying God ordered him to remove Garfield. He even danced and recited poems during his trial. The jury, unimpressed, sentenced him to death. In June 1882, Guiteau was hanged, reportedly singing hymns as the noose tightened. But questions lingered. Could Garfield have survived with proper care? Some believe if Alexander Graham Bell's newly invented metal detector, tested on Garfield, had been used correctly, the bullet might have been found safely. Others argue Garfield could have lived if doctors had simply left the wound alone. Conspiracy whispers also emerged. Did powerful factions want Garfield gone because of his reforms? Was Guiteau a pawn or just a madman who happened to strike at the perfect political moment? History may never give a full answer. James Garfield's presidency was cut short, his promise never fulfilled. He became a symbol, not just of political violence, but of a nation unprepared for the realities of modern leadership. His tragic end exposed the flaws of medicine, politics, and security in 19th century America. Garfield's death changed history. The nation mourned, but it also reformed. His assassination led to the Pendleton Civil Service Act, beginning the end of the corrupt spoil system. In that sense, Garfield's suffering was not in vain, but the haunting question remains: what if Garfield had survived? Would he have united the nation? Would history remember him alongside Lincoln and Roosevelt? We will never know. And so, the story of President James A. Garfield is one of hope, tragedy, and mystery, a chilling reminder of how quickly history can turn.